Russian President Vladimir Putin is traveling to North Korea for a two-day visit and his first trip to the country in 24 years. Putin's expected to meet with Kim Jong-un and sign a partnership agreement during his trip. In a letter published in North Korean state media today ahead of his arrival, Putin thanked North Korea for supporting his actions in Ukraine. He also said they'll work together to beat sanctions and will develop trade and payments systems that aren't controlled by the West. Here's what White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby had to say about this trip.
We're not concerned about the trip. What we are concerned about, Trevor, is the deepening relationship between these two countries. Not just because of the impacts it's going to have on the Ukrainian people, because we know North Korean ballistic missiles are still being used to hit Ukrainian targets, but because there could be some reciprocity here that could affect security on the Korean Peninsula. Now, we haven't seen the parameters of all that right now, certainly haven't seen it come to fruition, but we're certainly going to be watching that very, very closely.
Joining me now, Center for American Security co-chair, Fox News contributor, and former national security advisor to President Trump and VP Mike Pence, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. General, good morning.
Good morning, Cheryl. Thanks for having me this morning.
Yeah, it's always great to see you. We're showing your book, War by Other Means, a General in the Trump White House. So let's talk about this. What do you think Putin's true purpose is for going to North Korea after so many years of never traveling there?
Yeah, Cheryl, look, and I have to push back on on the comments made in the White House by Kirby. You know, it's parsing his words. This is pretty important because what Putin is doing, he's actually solidifying the alliance he's got with China and North Korea as well, because he really needs the armaments that North Korea can provide. You know, it's important in national security that you take adversaries off the stage. In other words, you actually, you basically work individually with each one of them. And what's happened is they've all collectively come together. Under the Trump administration, President Trump actually took Kim Jong-un, North Korea, off the table by his personal dialogue. And when you don't have that personal dialogue, things start to fall apart. You know, Biden hasn't talked to Putin in over 2 years. You can't treat an adversary that way. So what he's done, bottom line, he solidified the alliance. He's going to get more weapons. Yeah, he's created a backstop for him. China's going to provide the economic security, and North Korea's going to provide some of the weapons that he needs.
More the axis of evil. And as far as those payments goes, my guess is cryptocurrency. Because many have asked, how is Kim Jong-un surviving? And the answer is dealing in the crypto markets. And I think some of Putin's oligarchs have done the same. Anyway, let's move on. U.S. Special Envoy Amos Hochstein is visiting Lebanon today to meet with senior officials in a bid to ease these tensions between Israel and Hezbollah. Now, this, as an Israeli defense official, is warning that it's on the, quote, brink of what could be a wider escalation with Hezbollah. Now, Hochstein was in Israel yesterday. He met with Netanyahu and some other officials, but his visit actually came a day after Netanyahu dissolved the war cabinet. What is your assessment of the situation right now?
Yeah, Cheryl, you know, this is not good. This is the one that I'm really, really concerned about with Israel and Hezbollah. Because when you look at Hezbollah, Hezbollah is the largest non-state military actor in the world. They have over 100,000 missiles, and the biggest missile they've got, the Fatah missile, can reach anywhere in Israel that it wants to. You know, we thought that we had this situation pretty well contained, we the world, a few years ago. You know, in the second Lebanese war, when Israel went into Lebanon, you know, the United Nations Security Council, they passed what's called an UNSCR, United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, which pushed Hezbollah back from the border up to the Litani River, basically 20 miles. And then they put UNIFIL, which is UN Interim Forces for Lebanon, in place to make sure there wasn't any activity on the border. Well, what has happened is Hezbollah has basically taken over the border. It's forced Israel to evacuate over 80,000 of their citizens away from the border area. And there's been constant barrages going back and forth. And this can just break out. This is the one that really concerns me. If Israel, in fact, starts a third Lebanese war, it'll make Gaza look like child's play when it happens there.
So Lebanon is the real concern for you. It's Lebanon. It's not so much Gaza. It's Lebanon. Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this.
Yeah, because Gaza can handle.
Yeah. Well, and certainly there's been some advancements, especially in Rafah. But let me ask you about this. How concerned are you that at some point that U.S. forces are going to have to go in and assist, or do you think the Israelis can handle this on their own? And I'm talking about Lebanon.
Yeah, Cheryl, I think the Israelis can handle it on their own. It'll just be pretty much of a bloody mess out there. And all we need to do, we the United States, is provide them support. What I'm talking about is military support. We need to provide them economic support. And more importantly, we need to provide them political support, meaning Israel is our friend. We know their back's up against the wall. We need to be for them, full stop. Instead, we equivocate. We basically say, well, the Israelis are good here, but they're bad here. Hamas or Hezbollah is good here, but they're bad here. No. You have to back Israel full up, and we must go that way because the entire world looks at this, and they look at gaps and seams. And what I mean by that is an adversary will exploit a gap or a seam in our relations with Israel, and they'll push it forward. You see that actually happening here in the United States when you see all the protests you see on campuses and the anti-Semitism growing. And that's a gap and a seam that they're trying to exploit. Do I think we're going to put U.S. forces on the ground in combat? No. We'll may have some support forces there, but we won't put any combat forces on the ground.
Before you go, I do want to ask you about China. So NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg says the alliance is in talks to deploy more nuclear weapons in the face of growing threats from Russia and China. There's this new global analysis of nuclear weapons from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. They found that China's expanding their nuclear arsenal faster than any other country. And the report also found Beijing may have as many intercontinental ballistic missiles as the U.S. or Russia by 2030. Very disconcerting research. Your reaction?
Yeah, it is, because we know now we're going to be facing another major threat. We used to be, we only faced then the Soviet Union, now Russia. Now we'll have to face China as well. I was kind of confused about what Stoltenberg said about putting more missiles on alert. Look, we have our stuff on alert all the time, be it the missiles, be it the bombers, be it the submarines. When we've got 4 ballistic missile submarines on alert, they're on patrol 24/7. All the time. And when you look at the warheads they carry and the amount of missiles they carry, we're talking. We have over 600 missiles and warheads on alert all of the time, let alone the 400 Minuteman missiles we've got, plus the bomber fleet. So I don't know where Stoltenberg's coming from, because we're always on alert. But you have to be concerned about the Chinese. They are clearly growing. They're clearly going to exceed the Soviet Union, Russia, and it's a threat we're really going to have to face now and into the future as well.
Well, maybe he was talking about other European countries. That's a possibility. I don't know. But I'm not sure what he meant by that either. I agree with you. General Kellogg, it's always great to see you. Thank you for being here.